Turn that to all messages. All right. It's Sunday, and if you're watching this live, you must be a member. If you're rewatching this and you want to join my Sundays members only Q&A, you have to become a member. It's only 99 cents to become a member. If you can't afford to join, don't even worry about it. I do my public Q&As on Friday, and you're getting to watch this upload now. Just takes me a while to re-upload these, and I kind of just, you know, have a lot on my plate. But we'll wait for some folks to roll in, and then we'll make some tea, and then we will get started. I'm kind of curious about what's going to happen in this live, because I do have like a ton more members, and usually it's relatively busy, but maybe it'll be busier. If it tells anybody that I've gone live. I tried to use, I used my computer for the Friday Q&A last Friday, and that was rough. It was a whole new system, and then it like wouldn't let me like do the purpose of what I wanted to do, and the camera quality wasn't great, and it was just a frustrating experience all around for me on my end. I think everybody else was fine about it, you know, and so Lauren coming in hot with a $10 super. Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate it so much. Hey, everybody rolling in. Glad everybody's getting a notification. I was like, this is finally the time. No one's going to show up. No, I think it just goes that way. I haven't even picked out what tea I'm going to have. I've been so distracted this morning. So let me see what I'm going to do here. You know, I've been really pick it up off the floor where everyone should store their tea. I've been really enjoying this Moonlight White tea from Yunnan sourcing, so I'm just gonna keep enjoying it. It's what I've been having on a pretty regular basis. So I don't know why I lied and said I was gonna pick one out. I just had to find where I sat it. So hey everyone, we're rolling in. Chelsea says, good afternoon, April. I researched about what anti-parasitic cream does your body, and wow, the info I found out. Thanks for helping me with the wording to use to find it. You're welcome. Yeah, we can be just really empowered by just looking into like what like medicines or things we've used in correlation to what symptoms we're having. You know, it's a really big one. I need to make a video about ticks here pretty soon. Because people freak out about me all the time being out in the woods. You know, they're like, the ticks, and it's justifiable, but I'm pretty sure that most of the time when people have like chronic illnesses from tick bites, not all the time, but a lot of the time, it's actually you're chronically sick from the medication that they're using to treat you for the tick bite. And it's crazy if you look at the crossover. So I want to do a whole video about it to help people, you know, understand some things like that, but let's make some tea. It has been this last 2 weeks have been like the definition of chaos in my life, and just, you know, like super stress, and that has really that has really put a bunch of stuff in perspective for me of like what I just like don't want anymore, you know. And so it's just been, I don't know, something kicked over in me last night when I like found a way out of the stress, and it'll take time, but you know, I don't know. That's just been kind of what my week has been. For the update of it, it's just been like, you know, constant stress with the business, and yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be a change, and I think like part of the change will be a lot of like just like taking back or discovering for the first time my own like space to exist, if that makes sense, but also like slowing way down and like trimming the fat, so to speak, like off of like every aspect of my life. And I'm like, oh, look at that, turning 40 in a handful of months, and suddenly I have the urge to like deconstruct everything. But I mean, now or never, you know. I can't stay in the same cycle, you know. And what I really want to do is I like to teach, and that's what I like to do. That's why I have my YouTube channel. I like to just, well, my brain just wants to give you information, right? And you seem to want the information, so I'm just kind of like leaning into that more, I think. But there'll have to be a lot of changes to lean into it even harder, and I'm just excited about it. But yeah, it's just been like, it was to the point where like, I don't know. I think obviously stress kills, Right, but I don't think my body can like adapt to it the way I used to. Not that that was a healthy adaptation, you know. But it is just, I don't know. I think it's now or I die. I was gonna say now or never, but I think it's like now or I die. Like it's kind of like what it feels like with stuff, and um, but yeah, and I think that people have this misconception, and you know, obviously I'll talk about this stuff as it comes forward, and I'm like working my way through it. I always thrash through my shit publicly, but I figure it helps people. It's just part of my my process, you know. But like, there's like this real like misconception that like to be an herbalist, if like you're like really an herbalist, like that's all you do, right? Versus like a side gig or a side hustle or something that you kind of like practice but don't do it for a living. There's this misconception that it's like some like peaceful, tranquil life, and I'm like, this shit is hard. And I've been doing it for publicly. It's coming up on 12 years now, and that is crazy, you know. And I'm just ready for a huge shift, which is weird because in some ways the shift that I'm imagining is definitely in some ways it'll take me like much deeper into herbalism and like helping people with herbalism, but like free me up in a lot of ways. So you know, um, it's not all together in my head yet, and I know, but my brain gets excited when I finally see a way out, because you know that moment when you're like beat down by the world and you're like, there's no way forward, there's nothing, this is just it, this is just my existence, and then you like get an aha moment, you're like, oh, like you get all this energy because you're like, oh, I might not have to lay down and die and accept my reality, I can pivot and change. And that is always like a neurological cascade event for me. Like once I see the little fleck of something, it just goes boom, and it's all like, you know, my poor husband, bless his heart. And the last 15 hours, the level of information he has heard come out of my head as I piece together like the change that I'm planning on doing has probably been overwhelming. But we've been together for 20 years now, so he's likely at least used to it, you know. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna find it, and I'm gonna get there, and it'll probably be messy for a minute, and then it'll be like, oh shit, and then I'll just be in it, and then get to go through the second half of my life just like existing and helping people without like huge amounts of like pressure and stress, I think. um so that's the plan, and that's as much as I probably can really say about it, because it's one of those things where like I can talk about it a little bit, but like I always feel like I shoot myself in the foot if I put like everything in my head out there at once. But I'm excited. I'm excited for the change, which is always good because we're often afraid of change. Not that it won't be scary, but anyhow, thanks for joining me. As soon as my timer is up and I have my first sip of tea, most of you know this, but there's lots of new members too, I will start answering questions. Um, I don't know. I still feel like it's good that I give, like, I feel like it's good that I give, you know, insight into my existence in the beginning of these, and it lets people roll in and things settle in. But I also, I don't know, it's really important that, like, people continue to see me as human, right? I see so much damage done to people who, like it's self-inflicted kind of, but society also pushes them where, like, they feel the need to, like, only put their best face forward in every aspect, emotionally, physically, like every way when they're on social media. And I think that really harms not only society because we feel like we have to be perfectly put together before we have anything to offer to the world, but also it harms us because inevitably you will be human. Sorry, it's gonna happen. And you'll slip up and be human publicly, and then you destroy people's romanticized version of yourself, and they freak out when they have their storyline broken. Right, the thing that they've been using for escapism turns real. They can become like really hostile, and I've seen it happen to me, even if I'm very openly public about everything. So I think it's just important that I show up and say, shit's been hard. I'm trying to figure my way through it at almost 40, and I'm making a bunch of changes. Right, you know. But hey, at least my midlife crisis will be like restructuring my life for more peace. You know, I could go worse with it than that. and so like Piper says, she says it's so good when you share it, makes me think I'm able to push through. Yeah, you know, and I've heard a lot of people talk to me about that over the past decade because, you know, I used to share a lot of my traumas and stuff like that too, and we're not broken, we're just fucking tired. But it doesn't mean that we can't, you know, move through it or continue being whatever our version of success is just because we have baggage or hard things to work through. So, tea. I will say, I think one of my dreams is to just like have a really calm, quiet tea shop. Right, but like just super casual and like this is gonna be super random and funny to some people or weird, but like you know that that cartoon show, The Last Airbender, 100% just the uncle that wants to drink tea. Like 100%, you know, and like always laugh about it. You know, grew up watching it with her kids. You know, I'm just like 100%. I'm just ready to drink tea. Um, that's my midlife crisis. I just need a tea shop. Okay. So, if you have a question, say a question. I know you're all members, so a lot of you know the deal, but a lot of you also are new members. So, thanks for joining, and that's how it works. Just like my other Q&A, and I do my best to answer. Question. I seem to have low thyroid from what I can see from my blood work. How could I better support thyroid function? That's a great question. Thyroid really needs a lot more iodine than they tell you, and if you eat a lot of like bread or pasta or sodas, even juices, they put bromelain in this stuff, and it's like a flavor stabilizer or a dough conditioner, and it directly competes for thyroid, well, for iodine in your thyroid, right? And so looking into like the iodine protocol is a good idea. You have to start slow. Of course, you could also do like seaweed infusions and things like that and start paying attention to what you're eating. And now one thing that I don't think herbalists talk about enough is how mostly all plants in the mint family, thinking mint, catnip, lemon balm, motherwort, skullcap, they all have the capacity to downregulate your thyroid function. And while this isn't the case for everybody, and it depends, it's dose dependent and how long you're using it, right? Like tiny doses on a consistent basis won't likely do it. But if you are, let's say, and I just put this out there in case somebody's wondering, they can put pieces together. If you're drinking like a lot of lemon tea or a lot of mint tea every day, or if you're using mint on a regular basis, or you're constantly using a motherwort tincture, or you're just kind of like look for things that can be repressing your thyroid, along of what you can give your thyroid to help support. And B vitamins are really crucial here. So is magnesium, right? So definitely go check out like my brewer's yeast video, as well as like my magnesium oil video if you haven't. Question: should turkey tail be cycled, and is it okay to stop it abruptly? Can it cause the immune system to overreact? The really cool thing about turkey tail mushroom is it's an immune modulator, and that means that you can use it on a consistent basis, and you can stop whenever you want, assuming you don't already have like some sort of autoimmune you're trying to keep like in check. So something like elderberry constantly stimulates the immune system, or echinacea constantly stimulates the immune system, but turkey tail mushroom modulates it. So like if your immune system is too low, it brings it up. If it's too high, it calms it down. Out of the three things I mentioned, the people who hurt themselves the most is echinacea. I swear to God, people are like, oh, I've got a cold coming on, I need echinacea. Well, first of all, it's not antiviral. It creates like specific white T cells that are meant to clear out bacterial infections, right? But if you constantly keep those lymphocytes ramped up, it can actually give you a condition where you have too many white blood cells and it makes you sick, right? And people have it happen all the time because they use echinacea 24/7 because they've been told by herbalists to just pass along the same information that it can be used for everything. I love echinacea, but it's pointless for a cold or a flu or anything viral. You use it if you've got like an infection going on, something that you believe bacterial, post flu, like if you've got pneumonia or something like that that's not viral but bacterial, right? But no, you're fine to use a turkey tail on a regular basis. Question, how to stimulate the vagus nerve? My daughter has gastroparesis, and I've read that stimulating the vagus nerve might help. There are a lot of ways. Even just gargling water, it's, you know, like when you like gargle before you spit, will literally stimulate the vagal nerve. Yawning, singing. There are specific exercises you can do with your eyes, moving them back and forth. Like if you lay on a bed, this will sound funny, if you lay in a bed and make it so where your head can't move, and you use your eyes and you look as far one way as you can, and you hold that for 30 seconds, you'll probably out of nowhere get an urge to yawn or feel a bunch of saliva in your mouth, and that's because you've stimulated the vagal nerve. And now do it to the other side, right? And so there's a lot of books and YouTube videos on how to stimulate the vagal nerve. You can also get a TENS machine that attaches to this little piece of your ear right here, and that's directly connected to your vagal nerve. You can work with things like L-reuteri. L-reuteri yogurt is really fantastic for stimulating like oxytocin release, and because of that, it's directly related to the vagal nerve. And so all of that would likely help. And make sure that obviously she's getting enough magnesium, like bioavailable types that don't make you have diarrhea. You really need that for vagal nerve function. Thank you so much for the super, Deborah, and thank you so much, Gina, for your huge super. Let me roll up here and make sure let me roll through and make sure I answer the super questions and, you know, be a human and see what I missed. Gina says, question, my doc said my hemoglobin is at 7, a bit lower. I'll need to be transfused. My B's, vitamin D, magnesium, testosterone, calcium are all very low. Any advice? Well, I mean, if they're telling you that you have to get a transfusion because your hemoglobin is so low, it's definitely something to take very seriously. But I want you to like ask them and start digging into like why. I wonder if there's something going on in your gut blocking the absorption of these nutrients, right? And I also wonder if there might be like, let's say, a genetic component involved. Like, do you have mutations that are causing this, right? Like, that's where my mind always goes to. Like, what's going on in your gut that you aren't uptaking all of these vitamins and minerals and creating, you know, blood in your body? Then your hemoglobin is low. You don't have enough red blood in your body, red blood cells. But also, like, is it, if it's not gut related, is it genetic? So you really, really, really might consider maybe seeing a functional medicine doctor, not getting rid of your normal doctor, but maybe see a functional medicine doctor, just because they're more likely to be open to running specific panels that a normal doctor won't, right? Like you might even be able to get them to refer you to like maybe a geneticist, or get them to bill your insurance for like genetic screening, right? And then, you know, like getting your gut checked to see if there's anything going on there, like if you have like underlying Crohn's, you know, like, or if you have like something that's like blocking the absorption, like do you have like a high bacterial load? There's just something there that I would dig deeper for. And I mean, by all means, don't avoid doing the transfusion, because your body really needs the hemoglobin. But also, I would consider starting to eat liver. You can get liver capsules, but I would try to find local liver that you could like cook and eat. It's going to like save you while you wait. From a personal experience, I almost bled to death in 2020, and I knew it was bad, and it took them forever to get me in after losing a pregnancy situation. And the doctor looked at me and she was like, I don't know how, like my hemoglobin was barely okay, but okay. And she was like, I don't know how you've been bleeding for so long and not need a transfusion. And I said, because I probably ate about 5 pounds of elk liver over the week it took anybody to get me, to take me seriously. And so I was constantly replacing the iron and giving myself all these bioavailable nutrients so my body could like churn out what I was losing, you know, so it's something to look into there. Okay, so I feel like I miss people's supers if they don't ask it on it. Let me jump down here. If you gave me a super and you asked a question, ask it again so I don't miss it. Just say like super and then your question, that way, because I feel bad if I miss it in general. Okay, so Question. I remember you saying you can use hibiscus daily. I have had cold brew hibiscus before. Is it okay to have daily if it only sits in the cold water overnight? I can use it daily in cold brew. Yeah, you can use it daily as a cold brew or as a warm brew. It's really fantastic for lowering your blood pressure, you know, and it's also got like lots of like antioxidants and a little bit of vitamin C. More vitamin C in the cold brew, probably, just because you're not denaturing it with the heat, right? um, so yeah, it's totally fine, and you can also get creative with the hibiscus and add other fragrant herbs if you want when you're doing the cold brew, because it sits longer overnight versus the fast hot brew. Okay, so question. What's the best herbal regimen for vitamin D deficiency? Well, the thing to know is that vitamin D is actually a hormone, and your body synthesizes it by shunting cortisol, cholesterol to your skin at very specific receptors. And the second that you get sun on your skin, your body goes, all right, we can now take this cholesterol and turn it into vitamin D. That's why healthy animal fats and sun exposure is so important for vitamin D, and there's not really an herb that's going to replace those needs. Now, if you're like, I eat all the animal fats and I'm out in the sun all the time and my vitamin D levels are still low, it's probably magnesium. You need magnesium to do the synthesizing process of turning the cholesterol into vitamin D. And so getting light in your eyes, even if you just go sit in the sun in the very morning for like 15-20 minutes, you will increase your vitamin D levels quicker than if you use a supplement. And it sounds like supplements aren't working, probably. Your body, I mean, I'm not saying vitamin D supplement doesn't have its time and place, but if your body can't synthesize it, you're just like inflating your blood values and not necessarily a bioavailable way. Okay, here was a super question I missed. What protocol herbs do you recommend to restore lung heart health after quitting smoking for 20 years? That's a great question. So right off the bat, I really love mullein for this, obviously for the lung component, although she has been shown to be supportive of cardiovascular. But you could go deeper and you could work with like tiger's milk mushroom. Tiger's milk is this really cool mushroom. It's way more available in the US than it used to be, and it's fantastic for lung issues. My son ended up with like pretty bad asthma after like COVID hit, and the smoke was so bad that year that he just got asthma. The doctor told him he'd always have it. I was like, whatever. We worked on it. His asthma's gone now, right? And then what's really interesting is whenever you help your lung functions, you're by proxy increasing your oxygen levels, which helps your heart. So that helps, you know, conjunct it together, kind of. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm just going to use conjunct it. And then, of course, you got your classics like hawthorn. Hawthorn would be fantastic to work with. And then also consider researching like what vitamins and minerals are typically depleted from nicotine use, right? I know there's some, my brain wants to say it's a lot of B vitamins and stuff, but if you dig into that, like you'll be able to support your body's ability to recover, right? Because if you're still just deficient, right, then you're just going to kind of be pushing against these deficiencies. And so, you know, it's just something to look into, but I think those herbs could probably help a lot. Okay, question. I can't seem to find bulk 50-pound bags of bread flour that isn't enriched. I feel ya. I can find unbleached and unbromated, which is good. What are your thoughts on enriched flour? I don't touch it. I don't touch enriched stuff. It's really bad. We know that it causes B12 deficiencies, and it makes it look like you don't have a B12 deficiency. When they started talking about enriching flour, and you can like learn about this through that book I always talk about, Could It Be B12 or the B12 Foundation. They had people going on the news, doctors begging them not to do this because it would make it look like people didn't have B12 deficiencies from the synthetic folate that they add to it, right? Plus they've got iron shavings in it and all kinds of nasty shit that your body just can't use. I use all-purpose flour. I use all-purpose flour in all of my baking because it's the only way that I can get it unriched and unbleached and unbromated, you know, and so it works just fine. Sometimes if I want to make something that needs like a little bit more of like a protein structure in it, right, you could grind in some barley flour, you could add some oat flour and just kind of substitute that protein in there. Sometimes I just use an egg white not the yolk, but the white, because it adds more protein to it, you know. So you can just get creative with all-purpose flour and save a bunch of money because they charge you so much more for bread flour. Question: what would you do to support thyroid function if your thyroid was removed and also it came time you couldn't get the meds prescribed? So you don't have a thyroid to support, so there's no way for you to produce thyroid or to support thyroid. But what I would do right now, if I was you, and I was coming from a standpoint really worried about not being able to get the meds, is I would start stacking NDT. It's called like the Living Good store. I like that brand. You could get it from other places. NDT is natural desiccated thyroid, and you do not need a prescription to buy it. And you can buy it in big amounts, put it in your freezer or vacuum seal it, something to help keep it fresh. You don't have to freeze it, but like for long-term storage. And then you would essentially use that as your medication if like you could never get your medication, right? And then after that, like if we're talking Mad Max scenario, I don't think we are, but my brain always goes there, you know, because trauma. If you really had no access to medication because the world had somehow collapsed, I would learn where the thyroid gland is in an animal. Goats or chickens, or they all have them. You know, they're usually located in the neck region because that's what they do. And before Synthroid was made, that is literally how they treated people with thyroid issues. They would just take like usually like pig thyroid or cattle thyroid, and they would desiccate it and they would grind it up, and then you would take certain amounts of it throughout the day, right? Now it's all like defatted and stuff like that and turned into synthetics. But most people did better on Armour thyroid, which was, you know, old school like pharmaceutical grade NDT. And so really you have no choice but to have something available to you constantly. But you know, just for like a basic like medication shortage, or like things go weird in one way but it's not permanent, having that NDT in your house somewhere would not be a bad idea, right? And some people like it better, but you know, it's not necessarily standardized. So you, meaning like if you take a little teaspoon of it, you might get more or less thyroid in one day, but you'd still be getting thyroid. And the cool thing is it has all the thyroid versions in it, not just the T3, right? And so some people respond to it better. um, Okay, question. My nephew broke his ankle. It's in a plaster now. Can I use comfrey tea to help heal faster than use infused oil later? You could, but I'm a big proponent of making sure that his body has what it needs to heal. Over the years, I just kind of feel like comfrey forces stuff, which can actually, like, to an extent, maybe lead to, like, brittler bones, right? And more prone to breaking that area, but it doesn't mean that I wouldn't use comfrey. So what I would do first is make sure that he's getting tons of vitamin C alongside grass-fed gelatin, right? Because that's going to help your body do collagen synthesis, which is actually still involved in like bone repair and bone knitting. Make sure that he's getting a lot of high-quality dairy alongside vitamin K1 and K2. You could just supplement with K1 and K2. It's really easy to get because you need your body to be putting calcium where it goes. You need to be doing collagen synthesis to be able to rebuild that bone and repair the tissue, right? And then once his foot is out of the cast, you could start doing like the comfrey poultices or oils topically, right? Instead of trying to necessarily force it. But most of the time, you know, they call it a knit bone for a reason. It was used topically more than internally, although internally definitely has some merits. But over the years, I just feel like it's better to give your body what it needs to do the process and then help strengthen it, because it's kind of like if we force a house to be built on top of something that maybe is like not super stable, it will heal faster, but you're more likely for the house to collapse or the bone to re-break, if that makes sense. Um, okay, question. I've been struggling to find better alternatives of sugar that's not white crap sugar. I found cane sugar, but the ones I found, the grains are too large to bake with. Do you have anything you use? You know, I like cane sugar. It just depends on what you're trying to bake. You could probably look around and see like how coarse something is, you could ask them, like you could send them a message and be like, hey, what grain is your sugar, right? And you could also put it through a food processor like you were making powdered sugar, but just don't take it all the way. I like maple sugar. It's pretty good to work with. I like to find the higher quality blends because the lower quality blends tend to be more burnt tasting, if that makes sense, because you know you're cooking the sugar down and it can just kind of take on some of the smoke flavor. But I wouldn't really bake with it and everything just because it does have a maple flavor, right? And then of course there's always honey and maple syrup. Now honey works pretty well. A lot but not all of recipes can be adapted to using honey versus sugar. Typically you're just using the same ratio but pulling back on the other liquids in your recipe, right? um, but yeah, it can be challenging, and so sometimes your best bet is just to kind of finely powder it yourself, or ask the company how like fine grain it is, you know. um, Question: family member in his 30s has arthritis in various spots in his body, including his jaw. Doctor says it's more so genetic, whatever that means, and not necessarily from overuse. You know, did they say if it was RA, like rheumatoid arthritis, or was it like OA, like osteoporosis? Like osteoporosis is more from like overuse, and rheumatoid is from an immune issue. If it's osteo, even if it's not presenting like rheumatoid, actually the gelatin and the vitamin or vitamin C I talked about, there's a study, and I could probably dig it up, where they used gelatin, like high dose gelatin and vitamin C, to like repair joints and to like get away from like carpal tunnel as well as like arthritis. It's really crazy. So he could start drinking like lots of bone broth, buying some grass-fed gelatin, making his own jello, and then taking like, you know, a couple thousand milligrams of vitamin C a day. He can probably dig and find that study and see what dosages they were using. It was pretty high amounts though. And that would basically kickstart his like glutathione and collagen synthesis in his hands and his jaw and everywhere like that. If it's rheumatoid from an autoimmune point, get him looking into LDN. That's low dose naltrexone. He needs to calm his immune system down and deal with this autoimmune so it stops ravaging his joints. And LDN is really well tolerated. It's a super, super tiny amount of a medication that they used to use, or they still use, for like addicts, right? Because it stops them from like having cravings, but they discovered in tiny amounts it actually like heals the immune system and helps with chronic pain and mobility and things like that. And he could do both things at the same time, like the vitamin C and gelatin for the collagen synthesis, as well as the LDN for the autoimmune factor if it's rheumatoid. Those would definitely be things to look into. Okay, so question: any tips to help my 15-year-old kick flu B? She's taken Augmentin and Tamiflu and it didn't help. I suspect she has mono as well. Boy, shit, that is a double down. I feel I'd give her a hug, but I don't want to. Right? Like, oh, I'm so sorry. Lemon balm tea would be a really good one here, alongside of a real ginger tea. Like, I want you to go buy some fresh ginger and simmer it. It's gonna be kind of spicy, but it's got really strong antiviral properties. They're both pretty benign too, so like I'm not worried about using it in a kid, right? Ginger will help her not feel as nauseated. It'll help push the viruses out of her gut. It'll help calm down just everything that's going on with her immune system, right? And now lemon balm is also particularly effective against flu strains. And so if you could find some lemon balm tea, you know, I know that it's not the most common thing, but you might ask around in local Facebook groups if anybody has any dried lemon balm or a lemon balm tincture. I'm not looking for essential oils here, so don't fall for that trap. We're looking for the whole plant in some form. And if you can't get that, the ginger would be super helpful. Um, and then you could even do like activated charcoal here and there, to help like bind to the viral load in our gut. don't overdo it because it can, you know, make her constipated or dehydrate her. Just depends on how bad she's already vomiting, right? A linden is another good one if you happen to have some dried linden on hand, for like knocking down fevers and just kind of help cooling the body down. She's got a good amount of antiviral properties as well. Um, Let's see. Okay, a varicose vein brain dump, please. Male, 35. Varicose veins. I feel like I'm talking a lot about collagen synthesis today, but I can't express how important it is for our body to be able to do this. So, varicose veins usually come about in a few different ways. One is you have like unchecked high blood pressure. So, if you've never checked your blood pressure or never kept track of it, that's something to do first. If you have unchecked high blood pressure, on top of not taking in enough vitamin C or like healthy animal amino acids from like how our ancestors used to eat nose to tail. Well, we probably don't do that anymore. So what happens is your veins get weak because you're not doing collagen synthesis. Why am I struggling with that word today? You're not making collagen, right? And so your veins get weak, and then if your blood pressure raises on top of that, boom, you get varicose veins, you get spider veins, things like that. Topically, to calm it down, especially if they're painful, because they are dangerous. I don't want to think about it. Like if you nick one, right? Topical, you could find yourself a horse chestnut cream. That's pretty good for tightening it up. But you could also use like a witch hazel compress. You know, witch hazel is like really tightening tone, and these are like drying type tannins. But internally, I would really start doing things like drinking nettle infusions to help with your vascular system, making sure that you're getting enough, a fair amount of vitamin K1 and K2. K1 comes from leafy greens, and K2 comes from like animal fats, but almost everybody's deficient in them these days, and so you could just supplement with that as well. There's a fair amount of K1 in the nettle, but then you could start doing things like working with hawthorn to help your cardiovascular and your blood pressure if it's a factor, and then lots of vitamin C and lots of like grass-fed gelatin, not collagen, gelatin. You need all the amino acids that are present in the full profile for your body to be able to turn that into collagen, right? There is some research that suggests that supplementing collagen doesn't actually, like, our body can't take it and just use it as collagen, if that makes sense. So it's better to support your body's own natural ability to make collagen. And then movement. Movement is really important on top of all of this. You need to be doing things like walking for at least a half an hour a day if you can fit it in. I know times, you know, are crunched and we all have to work ourselves to death, but also you could consider getting yourself a little miniature trampoline for in the house and doing 10-15 minutes of rebounding a day, where that's where you're jumping up and down. It sounds funny, but it actually gets your whole circulatory system moving, and they've shown that like 10 minutes of rebounding is equivalent to like 45 minutes of cardio, except for it's easier on your body. And you could start doing dry brushing, just like what it sounds. Oh, I have one. Where you basically get yourself a brush that's meant for your body, and you start like learning the directions to go with it. It stimulates your lymphatic system, but it gets your blood flowing too. So for anybody, regardless of their cause of varicose veins, it's always vitamin K1 too. It's always, you need way more vitamin C and grass-fed gelatin. Move your body, and that will probably go a really long way. Okay, so question: what to do with COPD? That's a good one for, like, first of all, I would definitely go with cordyceps mushrooms, right? Start slow. That can make you feel shaky at first. You need just a little bit, but cordyceps like factually increases your oxygen levels, and you know that's probably something that has you exhausted because your O2 levels aren't high enough. And then I would include mullein infusion, right? And then I would look into the tiger's milk mushroom. All three of those things consistently would probably give you a fair amount of support for increasing your O2 levels and your like breathing lung capacity. You know, and if you couldn't get tiger's milk mushroom for some reason, a reishi mushroom would be another good option, right? But tiger's milk is so specific towards lung function that it's definitely worth hunting down. Thank you so much for the super Misty, and she is asking for help with athlete's foot. Yeah, athlete's foot is just a pain in the ass. I know it is, but it is a fungus, which means that we can easily like attack and kill the fungus. The first thing you need to do is get yourself some white willow bark, and then maybe find if you live in a region where wild sage grows, like not the culinary sage, but like think desert sage. That'll murder, kill athlete's foot. But you can make yourself a white willow bark infusion. It's really high in tannin. Soak your feet in that once or twice a day, right? But the thing is, athlete's foot, that bacteria likes to eat our dead skin. So I would get, if you don't have it already, make sure that you get like buy a bunch of those cheap foot scrubbers. I say cheap because you're gonna have to throw them away. The thing about athlete's foot is you also need like super hysterical hygiene, because what if you kill it but then like you put on an old pair of socks and you give yourself the bacteria back? What if, you know, some shoes you put on still had it and the spray never kills it? Now, I know times are tough, so you probably can't afford to throw all of your shoes away. I want to say if you have a deep freezer, you can freeze it for like a week and it kills the bacteria, but you don't want to go through all this just to reinfect yourself. Right. You could also use a pine pitch oil. She's pretty antifungal. Any of that stuff topically can really, really help. And if this will be a far-fetched one, but if you have made yourself the homemade milk kefir, you can soak your feet in milk kefir. I know it sounds funny, but it attacks funguses. The pH fucks up their ability to live. It introduces beneficial bacteria to your skin, you know, and so it's really, really beneficial. And by the way, for any men that have it, and this can happen for women too, if you have athlete's foot and you put your underwear on before you put socks on, and then you're also dealing with jock itch, congratulations, you just passed your athlete's foot to your junk. Right, because that's the way that works, and then they just treat it differently. So if you find that the athlete's foot medication isn't working for your feet, you could also get yourself stuff that's meant for down below and use it there, because it's usually stronger, you know, and so it passes on, you know. Okay, so question, I think this will be the last one because it's about 41 minutes in. Question, severe numbness in the hands, especially at nighttime. Any thoughts? Yeah, well, that one's a little complicated because it's happening at nighttime. So usually with numbness in the hands or in the feet or anything like that, I highly suspect like a B12 or a B1 deficiency in some way. You know, B1 is thiamine, B12 is B12, right? And that can cause neuropathy. But if it gets worse at night, it makes me think that there still could be a neurological component even if it's B1 or B12 deficiency. So I would absolutely get those deficiencies levels checked. And you need to check them before you start supplementing. Because if you supplement before you go take the test, they'll high-five you until your levels are fine, right? And so those are things that I would consider getting checked. You could probably check your magnesium levels too if you're not already taking magnesium. That can lead to neuropathy too, but usually you have way more symptoms than just numbness when it's magnesium. But with B12 and B1, it can really kind of show up just that way, right? And then I'm guessing something's not regulating with your nervous system, or do you have like maybe cardiovascular issues if it's worse at night? Right, because you're laying down. Is it just at night or when you lay down in general? That's something to start asking yourself. Start keeping a journal of like, when is this showing up? How is it feeling? Is it when I am sleeping? Is it in time I incline? And maybe start, I don't know, checking your blood pressure and see what's happening there and keeping a record. Anyhow, so, it's at night and while I'm driving. So while you're driving, I also wonder if it's like spinal involvement, right? Have you ever been to a chiropractor for like a pinched nerve or had any imaging done on your spine? Like particularly around like your neck or like your midsection? Because while you're driving, we put pressure, right? And how do you sleep? Are you sleeping on your side? Are you right? So it makes me feel like if it's worse while you're driving, there's like nerve involvement. But hear me out. You need B12 and B1 to do nerve functions. So that's why when people have sciatica really bad, they usually have a B12 deficiency, and they'll tell you that B12 shots can help with sciatica pain. But what they should really tell you is that you have a B12 deficiency, and that's why the B12 shots help with your sciatica pain, because the sheath around the nerve ending is like not functioning because you don't have the nutrients you need. So it could still be related to those deficiencies, but there's definitely something, a nerve impaction happening, especially with that clue about when you're driving. So, but yeah, it's something that I would look into. Thank you so much for joining me, folks. If I missed any of your questions, I apologize. I don't mean to. I do my best. I do my best. But they're every Sunday, and you can, as members, you can join on Friday too. I don't not answer member questions on Friday. I just feel bad because like on the Friday Q&As, it's just like hundreds of shit going past, and so it's hard for me to catch everything. But I really appreciate your support. I really appreciate you being here with me. I look forward to like all the new stuff I've got coming out that I haven't talked about entirely, but just, you know, you'll enjoy it, I think. And in May I'm gonna sit down and start doing the members like a gifted research consultation one-on-one with me that will be recorded, just so you know, and it will be shared with everybody after, so you know, we can keep giving them answers. And anybody who's in the $4.99 tier and up gets access to that giveaway. I'm probably just gonna start with one, maybe two in a month, just to kind of get the feel for it, right? But I'd like to push into where eventually I do once a week. It just depends on the rhythm and how draining they are or are not for me, if that makes sense. So, thank you so much for watching. And if you're a future person, consider becoming a member. It's just a couple bucks a month. Actually, it's only 99 cents a month now for like the entry level, so it's like super accessible to everybody. Make sure that you check out my apothecary, check out my books, make sure that you like, comment, share, subscribe, turn notifications, and all that type of stuff. Sharing is super important because it helps other people realize that they can take their health back into their own hands, get some work out there, and all that type of stuff. So thanks so much for watching, folks, and I'll see you next time. Bye.